participation is just, if you're looking at the adult primate males, and then when the big comes all the way back, it would have been all the way back in every other recession, but this time it slightly went, and it really, a lot of people didn't pay much attention, but the 2015 balanced budget agreement, but that Obama had to give in something to the Republicans there because the Disability Trust Fund literally was running out of money. And if they didn't make it a fix, there would be no money today. It was going to run out in the middle of 2016. So 2015 took $300 billion out of the Social Security Trust Fund and put it in the Disability Trust Fund, just took it out. And they also had some reforms. Well, there were 20 states where you don't have to have any kind of medical thing to get disability. Now you do. And also, you know, so it may be.
But my point is that as long as the Federal Reserve keep interest rates at record low levels, we can say, we can cut taxes and we can grow the economy even though there's no signs of it. We can spike the stock market, we can provide liquidity to the stock market. Look how well the stock market is doing, even though there's no connection between, no necessarily strong connection between rising in a dollar $26,000 and wage growth. As long as the Federal Reserve keeping the interest rates low, we can keep coming with these policies because the Federal Reserve is going to get
Well, they've raised interest rates 6 times. I mean, it's not that low anymore. Europe is still negative interest rates, but it's not that. The Federal Reserve is, you know, this remains to be seen, and it also remains to be seen what Mr. Trump does if the economy is going south and they're still raising interest rates. And that's been the classic, I remember the ads in 1981, they had Paul Volcker as a vampire sucking the housing industry put ads like that.
Inflation was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. So I just want to say that I agree with you on the Russian thing.
Yeah.
I seriously,
Having worked in the campaign, there was no.
It's not so much that. It's just that it's like the Facebook inquiries, right? The whole Facebook thing
Right.
about information. I think there's a deliberate attempt to look the other way, which is exactly what Facebook did when Cambridge Analytica, was using their data. They looked the other way because that's how you do business.
I tell you, it's worse than that.
Right?
It's
But when Facebook comes and says that the Russians spent $100,000 to influence American voters, I think that's the most dishonest thing that anybody. I can see that as anything that anybody can take seriously.
I can
You
tell
don't
you.
think they really spent $100,000?
What is $100,000? I mean,
Don't worry about a billion.
it's like, what is $100,000 and how is that possibly going to sway America?
Well, that was $100,000 how much they paid Facebook.
No. This is something that I think that we need to seriously think about. That if we don't understand that countries compete with each other, countries undermine each other. We call it diplomacy, we call it this is going on. Countries still from each other.
Disinformation.
Right.
Yeah, the United States
That's
interfered.
the whole idea of data scraping has been going on. That's what you do all the time when you make your polls. The only difference is now technology makes it, possible for you to scrape, billions of data that you typically couldn't do. But if we as a society don't understand that, and don't understand that somebody's trying to influence us all the time, marketers are trying to influence, Facebook itself is trying, but the most important thing that the Congress did not ask Facebook, right, is a few of them tried to. Most of them in Parliament try to pretend that they don't know what's going on, or that they don't know at all, which is a shameful thing because if the group of people who are running this country don't know anything as they pretend not to know or pretended not to know, that's a disaster. Okay? And the real question is, how come Facebook is making money off my data, off your data, but I'm not making money off my data?
Right.
right?
You can-
That was the only time anybody asked anything close to that you begin to see Zuckerberg feel uncomfortable because, so I do not believe that the Russians tried to influence American voters, and if they did, they didn't succeed any more than they would have succeeded 20, 30 years ago. And vice versa. And I think that's very dishonest of the media in particular pushing this, mainstream media pushing this narrative.
Shortly after Trump got elected, you hear like the Democrats saying, well, Russia influenced. They kept saying that Russia influenced the election. I'm waiting for the information, but you were saying that it's worse than what we think.
It's, in terms of, not from the Russians, but it's the idea of Facebook. Because when you think about Facebook, they had all these billions of dollars of investors that they had to find a way to monetize their business, right? And it's a very popular technology. And what they did was they actually sent, it wasn't Russians, you had people from Facebook
Yeah, they were both.
and people from Google
Yeah.
assigned to our campaign, assigned to Hillary's campaign, so that we would buy ads from them. So they're telling us how to buy it, but what are they selling? They're selling information about you,
Yeah.
and you, anybody on Facebook. They figured out how to monetize that information, and they sell it to us. Like when you buy an ad on TV, the TV station is saying, oh, we've got so many people this age and men and women watching the show, and you should pay us this amount. Well, Facebook is actually selling, we've got so many people that fit this category that would vote for you if they only knew this information about you. So give us money, but they're selling it directly to you. And so the amazing thing is, they were all upset about Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge had a small role in the campaign, not a big role, but Brad Parscale, who ran a digital operation, really did have $270 million that they raised, and they spent $90 million on Facebook and social media. But really the person who won the campaign, and I admire them for the way they did it in 2012, Barack Obama was losing after the first and second debate, and he was tied going the last weekend. And what he did was, he had 17 million Facebook friends, and they had Facebook people with their campaign in Chicago. He got 1 million people to open up their contact lists in the last weekend. And 1 million, the average person on Facebook is a woman who's 50 years old with 300 friends. I now get 1 million people to open up their contact list for me. I'm hitting every voter in America. And not from a politician who is endorsing me or whatever. It's from your mother or your sister or it's your girlfriend.
Get the vote out.
And it's like, and he beat, you can see the average of polls on the Real Cloud Politics website. He didn't go ahead of Obama until, and it was a combination of Sandy, what he did versus what Romney didn't do, with that Facebook technology, where all of a sudden, the day before the election, he goes up by 1.5 points. And he was tied before that, going into the weekend. And then he won by 3 points on election day. And really, it was, they used technology, and the media gave them bravos for it. Now it's like, okay, the Trump campaign, we used it, and it's like something. But you know what it is? Our strength is our freedom. In America, we have free speech, we have all these freedoms, but our weakness is also our freedom. And so you're looking at this, and the Russians, they don't care about it. When you look at the actual ads they placed, they're pitting one side against the other, trying to just create dissension in the American public, but it was no significant sum, it didn't really affect anything. But when you think about how that technology can be used where you're invading people's privacy, and like you said, you should be the one who sells it. In Europe, they have much tougher laws. You just can't go in and, when we work elections over in Europe, my European clients can't get the same level of information from Facebook here that we can here that they can over there. But, an individual, if you want to sell your opinions, you can sign up for a company and they will pay you to take surveys online and stuff like that. And you'll get you'll get a stipend each month. Facebook, if they want to sell your information, you should be able to sign up for it and they should pay you. Right now, their shareholders are making the money, their employees are making the money.
Right, but there's so much misinformation online. I mean, I write for a financial website, and I write some articles about Facebook, and people online say, I used to work at Facebook, they never sell your data. I mean, this is almost,
Well, they don't sell
even though somehow they're monetizing it, and it's almost like they have a shareholder responsibility fiduciary responsibility for the shareholders. If they can make money selling your data, they're gonna sell it. It's almost not easy to think otherwise
Do you guys have any questions?
until the public pushes back.
Yeah.
And they're talking about some type of subscription service, which is total different business model.
Yeah.
Totally different business model.
We have a couple of questions. You want to come up so that you can be in the camera frame? Perhaps if you go over to that side. Yeah, you can stay
Across the
there.
stage?
You can stay there.
Oh, okay.
Just face the camera.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I really appreciate the conversation, gentlemen. But just to preface, I have been voting for a little over 30 years. And, I mean, I grew up by my family, primarily baby boomers, some of the so-called Xers, the youngsters. And I work in the retail sector, and it's predominantly so-called millennials. And I'm just curious on what you gentlemen have. We're in the political season. What does the United States believe and act on collectively at this point? It's just so. It's been so reorganized. We're on this red-blue thing. Everything is politicized now on the red and blue. Reconstructed civil war since 2000. And just on nuclear matters, I speak to millennials, if you will. They've never seen a nuclear test. The idea of mutually assured destruction is totally hypothetical. Maybe it was in a Marvel movie somewhere. These things were taken as you know, just natural for baby boomers. That if we have any kind of nuclear policy, that if we can't do anything too radical, if we misstep, the planet blows up. Millennials have no notion of this. So even when we talk about nuclear matters, that doesn't exist. The Farm Bill was, during my voting age, was totally uncontroversial. You know, in the commercial farming sector, those farmers need certain government action and supports, and the people on the coast have to eat. Now we have all these things. We're going to box vegetables and send to poor people, and they're going to work and sweep floors before they get something to eat. It's been everything is politicized on this red-blue thing. So how can that end? How can that end positively, or how can there be any same end?
All right, good question. I think that's a good question. But also, before we start answering that, I think we are also getting close to 9 o'clock, which is round up time. So this is like our final statements.
I don't think we're as divided as we think, relative to historical civil war was a lot. But even an example, I think it was in 1911, there was it was really the Scopes monkey trial with famous lawyers, this is in the 1920s, but the lawyer, he was the famous guy who Clarence Darrow. Well, there was a trial in 1911 for Clarence Darrow. And what happened was, in 1911, they had a newspaper strike in Los Angeles. And the newspaper union, the president and the treasurer, the brothers, they put a bomb in and killed 20 people. And there was a trial, and at that point, Clarence Darrow was what was called a labor lawyer. He represented the unions on the left. And he was a moderate labor lawyer. But what he did, he went to the form of the jury and offered him $4,000. And but the form of the jury was clever, and he said, geez, he knew the governor of California hated Clarence Darrow, and the newspaper people really hated. So he said, well, these people give me more money to sort of do a sting on Clarence Darrow. So they had literally a sting, and the police arrested Clarence Darrow, so he took $4,000. So now they had a trial of Clarence Darrow for bribing the juror in that trial. So he hired the most radical labor lawyer at the time. The history's forgotten his name, but And he came in, and he said to the jury, there's no doubt that Clarence Darrow tried to bribe the foreman of the jury. There's no doubt these two brothers placed a bomb in the press room of the Los Angeles Times, killed 20 people, and then went on to say that was all justified because the workers are so exploited in California, and so what they did, and so if they were justified planting that bomb, so certainly Clarence Darrow should be acquitted of just trying to help them, and he won, he was acquitted. And so how divided was the country when that took place? Actually, yesterday's New York Times, they had a thing about, in 1958, they had a thing about what happened 60 or 70 years ago. They had a giant nuclear bomb drill in New York City where hundreds of thousands of people, everybody participated essentially. They went down to their shelters, and there was a couple of people who didn't go down. That was sort of weird. You didn't have to, but everybody went down to their shelters. Now, what sort of ended it was, at some point, people said, like, they drop a 50 megaton bomb in New York City, and you're in the suburbs. Even if you have you made your own shelter, how are you going to stay on the ground for 3 weeks without food or water? Realize the whole idea of fallout shelters was pointless for us.
But I would agree that people have more in common, but I tell you that the big disconnect, James, is the elites are really disconnected from the large part of the population. What's ironic to me is during our campaign, Donald Trump, this multi-billionaire New York City real estate developer, had more in common with coal miners and small business people out in the Midwest and the heartland than the people in Washington. And I think at some point, if the elites still have basically the institutions of people who control the power, whether it's lobbyists, what they call the swamp now, if they stay disconnected from the average person, you will see populists right and left rise up, and there will be elections where Bernie Sanders almost got elected president. If it wasn't for the Democrat superdelegates, he would have been the Democrat nominee. And his solutions were very different than Donald Trump's solutions. But both of them there was a realism to them, there was a right and left populism that the average person is saying, the people in Washington don't represent me anymore. I'm going to vote for this guy, and I just want to have some changes. And that's how Trump got elected. It was just, we were tired of Hillary, and enough people were saying, I'm going to show up and vote for him. So, if he doesn't get it right, the economy doesn't keep growing, company, and I think he's going to get it right and get reelected. But in spite of some of his personality combativeness, people will say, like you're saying, his bark is worse than his bite. And by and large, the performance could be really good. So we get to that point, it's all like, oh, we just went through a long season of Celebrity Apprentice where it was entertaining, but you know what? It was a pretty good season. We'll give him another 4 years because things got better. The dangerous part is if things don't get better. But I think his policies are going to work. And your friend Larry Kudlow, who you conversed with about the economy, he wrote the tax cut plan, and things are going to get better in that regard, and things, if America gets stronger, we'll be in better shape.
But I think
He's a farmer.
But I think the point you're making about if things don't get better, this disconnect between the elites and the regular people, that if and it gets sort of back to what we're talking about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve knows that when they set policy, this policy, this wealth effect, has benefited the elites. You follow?
Yeah.
And so until they undo that, and this sort of populism is what he's talking about. Is sort of it's not just U.S. It's worldwide. Everybody's against these policies that very small segment of society is benefiting from. You have to undo that. I think the Federal Reserve trying to undo this policy where only a very small segment
No, I think
of society.
that's sort of, unemployment went from 10.8% to 3.9%. Everybody's idea, it's not.
Well, I'm talking about like this wealth effect that's pushing assets prices to the roof and benefiting, and people's rents going to the roof. And I think in general that in tough times, I think people have a natural tendency to kind of like engage in what they call
Yeah,
independent politics. Or
When
what
you
have
talk
you,
about the farm program, I mean, that's worse than almost anything. Right? You have, a simple example, say a woman's going to bake a cake for her children, and she realizes she needs some milk, she needs some sugar, but she lives in sort of sketchy area, so she goes to the store and she puts half her money in one shoe, half her money in the other shoe, and she gets robbed on the way there, but she said, don't hurt me, I got my money in my shoe, but generally you look in the other shoe. When she gets there, she pays twice as much for the milk and twice as much for the sugar because of farm programs. I mean, basically, you have a milk program. The government sets the milk. It's illegal to sell milk below a certain price. Now, there's maybe 200 million people in the United States who drink milk, and maybe a few 100,000 own dairies. But I guarantee you, none of those 200 million people ever wrote a letter to a congressman saying, I drink milk, and if you allow a free market price for milk, I'd vote for you and I'd give you a donation. No one's ever done that. But most of the farmers, who are in the dairy business give all kinds of money to politicians, swamp people, whatever. In fact, I don't know if you remember John Connally. He's most famous. He was in the car with Kennedy, and he was governor of Texas, and the bullet went through Kennedy's neck and into his wrist. And there was a question whether it was 3 bullets or 2 bullets, and he died. His wife wouldn't let him take the silk, and he didn't have to see the pristine vote. But what happened to him, he switched parties after that. He became Secretary of Commerce under Nixon, and he was caught in an FBI sting where the milk lobbyist handed him an envelope with $5,000 in cash to raise the price of milk again, and they had him on tape and everything, and there was a trial, and his lawyer said, look at this guy, he's wearing a $50,000 watch and a $15,000 suit. How would you get him bribe $5,000? That didn't seem like a really great argument to even have on tape and to get quit. And sugar is worse than milk.
Yeah. All right, that's, I guess, our panel for today. Thank you very much for coming. Our panelists have been Professor Brofman, John McLaughlin, Ralph Baker, and myself, Wuyi Jacob. See you in 3 months. And keep asking the questions.
Oh,